Hey friends, I haven't made a car video in a little while, but I'm teaching at the college today and I got here a little early, so I thought I would talk about kind of a random thought process I'd had. So one of the teachers at the Zen Center is teaching a class on kind of Buddhism 101, and I've been attending to kind of be supportive. And so the first class dealt with the Buddha's early life and kind of the early teachings. And there are these legends, this mythology that grew up around the Buddha's early life and his how he was born, where in one version his mom dreamed that a white elephant entered her side, and then she gave birth on the road on the way to her parents' house, and she gave birth standing up, and the Buddha came out and there was no pain, and he took 7 steps, and every place he stepped a lotus blossomed, and he spoke right away and said that he was the Tathagata. And there's a lot of other kind of like supernatural aspects, that gods came down and flower petals rained, and that he remembered his lifetimes before he was born as the Buddha. And some of the people in the class got really focused on the historicity of these legends. Like they wanted, like, well, where's the proof? And what did these other Buddhas before Buddha say, and what did they do, and what did they teach, and what kind of life were they in? And they really wanted to get into like the nitty gritty of these kind of supernatural events. And I was really struck by how important it was to them to essentially kind of prove or understand the historicity of these kind of like supernatural, more than human kind of occurrences. And these are all Westerners, these are all Americans, and for the most part all white people. And I was really struck by how important it was to them, and how when I talked to Buddhist peers from Eastern countries, Thailand, China, Japan, this doesn't seem to be as important a need for them. Like they don't seem to worry about it quite so much. And I actually mentioned that. I said, hey, it seems like in the class I brought it up, that it seemed really important to the Westerners. And so we were talking about that a little bit. And one of the points I raised, which I found very interesting, is I think a lot of that comes from the kind of Abrahamic, the Western European kind of like cultural roots. Because even if you are a rationalist or an atheist or an agnostic, culturally there's a lot of Abrahamic momentum or kind of like underpinnings in a lot of Western society. And those religions tend to be deist and theist. And so if the supernatural events are not historically true, then I think a lot of people feel like their religious practice or their religion is invalidated. If Jesus was not the Son of God, if he was not killed and then resurrected days later, I think for a lot of Christians that would invalidate their religion. Or in Islam, if an angel did not actually come down and speak to Muhammad, I think for some Muslims that might invalidate their religion. And it's interesting because both of those religions, I think, have moral lessons that are good for people and valid regardless of the historicity of any supernatural occurrences. But I think for a lot of people that are in belief-based religious practices, if those supernatural things do not occur, it would kind of invalidate that. And in Buddhism, and certainly in Zen Buddhism, the practice is much more important than the person. And so if I got sent back in time and could absolutely unequivocally prove that the Buddha did not take 7 steps and a lotus bloomed at every step, and he spoke as a 2-hour-old infant, if raining flower petals did not come down, really wouldn't affect me very much, because the teachings are more important than the one person who is the historical Buddha. And honestly, on the flip side, if I got sent back in time and could absolutely prove that lotus blossoms did sprout at every step, and gods came down and flower petals, it honestly wouldn't affect my practice that much either, because the teachings are the important thing. There's a story that the Buddha said that holding on to the teachings of Buddhism are like a raft, and you use the raft to get to the other side. But then it would be quite silly to say, like, well, I love this raft so much that I'm going to put it on my head and carry it around now that I'm on the other shore. It's a kind of not functional attachment to the teachings or to the Buddha. And I think deifying the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, is problematic in certain ways and contexts, but deifying him to the point that he becomes more important than his teachings, I think the historical Buddha would probably find that very sad, because what he was interested in was understanding suffering and the end of suffering, and helping other people understand suffering and the end of suffering. And there's no supernatural aspect of the Buddha or of his life that validates or invalidates those teachings. And so this is a little bit of a ramble, but I just thought it was interesting seeing how important, trying to verify the supernatural aspects of the Buddha's life were to some of the members of the class, and thinking about why that might be quite important. And I think because most of them were raised in Abrahamic culture, even if they're not followers of those religious traditions, just in the culture, it's kind of underpinning, kind of on a subconscious level. I think that became really important. It made me think about how in a belief-based or deistic or theist religious practice, there's probably a lot more pressure to try to prove the historicity of supernatural events. And in Zen, we don't really worry about it too much. And I think that is kind of interesting. So hopefully you found that interesting as well. And it's nice to see everybody from the car.